purpose of today's video is to show you how to build a cover clamp frame on a sailboat. We'll explain it from start to finish, how to put a perimeter tubing, and how all the parts are used. This is basically what a cover clamp kit consists of. We have the K600 clamp, which is used to connect the tubings. We have the couplings, which connects tubings end to end. We have rubber tips, which protect the deck. Slide locks, which are used on the vertical support. End plugs to seal the ends of the tubing. Protection pads to used at the intersection where the vertical support meets the ridge pole, that's to protect the cover. And then the color code system, which is used to label each piece so you'll know exactly where it goes by color and number. It makes it very easy to put it together each year. The tools needed to complete a cover clamp frame are a ruler and a pencil, a tubing cutter, a nut driver, and a screwdriver. Some of the parts you'll receive in your cover clamp kit are couplings and slide locks. This is a double coupling, this is a single coupling, and this is a slide lock. The difference between couplings and slide locks have no restriction in the center, as these two do. This will slide down the tubing, where these will only slide over the end of the tubing. They're used in different locations for different purposes. They also take different size screwdrivers. There is a change in the type of couplings used in the kits. As of October 15th, 2024, the double coupling has been replaced with the high-strength steel single coupling. All kits will now have high-strength steel single couplings. On a single coupling, we use a number 2 Phillips screwdriver. It's a little smaller screw. The number 2 fits it well. We also use, on a slide lock, you can use a number 2 Phillips screwdriver also. If you want, you can even use a straight slot. The way the screw is made, it'll take a regular slotted screwdriver. You can use it that way. I kind of like the Phillips because it holds the screwdriver in place on the screw. Cover clamp parts are made specifically for this purpose, for a frame system. These are not regular EMT couplings, and this is not a regular chair leg. Our couplings are all welded seam, high-strength couplings. If you look inside, you can see there's a welded seam in there. Both the single and the double couplings are made this way. These are extra strong. These are not just EMT couplings. These are made specifically for the purpose of building a frame. EMT couplings are not made that way. They won't take the stress and the strain that these couplings will. The rubber tips have a molded in metal insert in the bottom so that the tubing, when the weight of the ice and snow and frame is on this rubber tip, it won't punch through and damage your deck. All our rubber tips have that insert built into them. Also, you'll need to tighten the clamps a 1/2-inch nut driver. You can also take and put the blade of the nut driver into your battery drill and use this to tighten the clamps. This makes it a lot easier and a lot quicker, especially for a reassembly. You'll also need a 1/2-inch deep wall socket. We use this for the final tightening of the clamps, just to snug them down a little tighter. Also, a knife or a razor knife comes in handy to cut the strapping that we use to hold the frame cross-tied side to side, and also we use that strapping on our covers. In the video, you'll see us making bends in tubing. The bend that we use the most is a 60-degree bend, and the way we make that is we use a tubing bender. The way we make that bend is we take our tubing bender, place it on the tubing. We've marked this tubing at center point because if you're going to make a rib and you're using a 10-foot piece of tubing, you'll mark it at the 5-foot mark, which we show you in the video, and then you'll install the tubing bender with the line lined up with the star on the bender. And then you'll make the bend. We step on the tubing bender as we're going to make the bend, and we're going to bend this to 60 degrees. Now, the way we determine 60 degrees, on the side of the bender, there are lines. You'll see 30, 45, 60. When that line is parallel to the ground, that's a 60-degree bend. And that's what we want from most all our ribs and rib legs. All right, first we have the K600 clamp. There's 5 in a bag on a kit, and on the back it shows you how to put it together. There's 2 halves, an A and B, a rubber insert, a bolt, a nut, and a washer. In fact, I'll show you how to do it. It's very simple. All right, first we take part A and the bolt. We're going to put the bolt through part A. Then we have the rubber insert, which slides over the bolt, like so. Then we have part B, goes on last. And then we have a washer and a nut. Just screw it on so it's flush with the end of the bolt, because you'll need that plate to install it on the tubing, and then you'll tighten it up. That's how you assemble a K600 clamp. One of the things you have to do when building a cover clamp frame is to cut the end, the factory end, off the tubing. It will not lock our end plug in place because it's a little larger than what it should be. But when you cut this tubing, it will lock in place. So what we're going to do is we're going to take like an 1/8 inch off the end of the tubing with the tubing cutter, and that will work fine. As we go around, we're just tightening the handle. Once we've cut the tubing, we're going to ream it with the reamer that's built into the tubing cutter. Basically just put it in, rotate it back and forth, and it just opens that up, takes the sharp edge off. Once we've done that, we're going to install the red end plug and tap it in. It's nice and snug, it'll stay in there, and that seals the end of the tubing. Every piece of tubing in the frame should have a red end plug in it. One of the first things we're going to have to do in making a frame on this particular sailboat is make a perimeter tubing. You can either put it inside the lifeline stanchions or outside the lifeline stanchions, whichever works best for you. What that'll do is give us a place to fasten our rib legs wherever they may fall, because the lifeline stanchions are far apart on this particular boat. We like to keep our ribs about 36 to 40 inches apart. And by having that perimeter tubing, we can fasten our rib legs along the length of the boat wherever they may fall on the frame. The first part about making a perimeter tubing is to decide whether you're going to go inside the lifeline stanchion or outside the lifeline stanchion. On this particular boat, we have plenty of room on the outside, so we'll put it on the outside. And then our rib leg can either mount inside or outside this particular tubing. We're going to have to put a bend or an arc in this tubing to match the shape of the boat. So we're going to start by making a mark at the first stanchion here, and then we'll put a slight bend on it to bring it back so it'll come around and meet the next stanchion back. All right, in order to make this bend, we're going to use a tubing bender. And what we're going to do is hook it onto the tubing, and that line we're going to line up with the star on the side of the bender. And we're going to just step lightly on the bender and make a little bend in this piece of tubing like so. That should be plenty for what we need. I purposely put a bigger bend in here than we actually need. I want to show you how to take some bend out, which is very easy. Just put it under a cleat, or you can do it on the ground under a car tire or a cradle or anything that's solid, and just bend down slightly on it to open the bend like so. And then we're going to try it again. Now I've made a bend where we've had the mark, and I've also made a second bend to help line up with the stanchion behind me a little bit better. And now we're going to fasten this tubing to the bow rail and the lifeline stanchion with a cover clamp. On the end of the perimeter tubing, I've installed a rubber tip. This will keep the cover from getting caught on it and chafing. It just gives it a little bit of padding. The next step in the process is to put a coupling on the end of this tubing that we've just bent. Now we have 2 kinds of couplings. This is our single coupling. Both couplings are welded seam, high strength couplings. This one we're going to use on the perimeter tubing. And the rest of the frame we're going to use our double coupling, which is twice as long as a single coupling and has 2 set screws either side of the joint. It's a much stronger coupling. Now we're going to install the coupling on the end of this tubing with the screws facing down, and we're going to tighten it with a screwdriver. Now we're ready for our next piece of tubing as we move aft on the boat. Now we've installed the perimeter tubing on the port and starboard side. Each piece was shaped and bent just like we showed on the first piece. They're all installed and clamped to the lifeline stanchions using cover clamps. All right, the next step in the process is we're going to make a rib so we can determine the height of the ridge pole. The first thing Fred's going to do is he's going to measure and find center of the piece of tubing, which would be 5 feet on the 10-foot tubing. He's going to make a mark, and we're going to bend it with the tubing bender to a 60-degree bend. What Fred is going to do is he's going to put the tubing bender on the tubing and line this star, which is the center of the tubing bender, line that star up with the line he just made. And he's going to bend this to 60 degrees. Now we determine the 60-degree bend by when this line is parallel with the tubing, that's 60 degrees. They're all marked in different increments here. That's 30, 45, 60. And 60 degrees is the bend we want to use on all our ribs and rib legs. On this particular boat, we're going to use a constant height ridge pole. That means basically is the ridge pole will be the same height from bow to stern, but we have to determine the height of the ridge pole. In order to do that, we're going to go to the widest point of the boat, and we want to be a minimum of about 8 inches above the height of the lifeline stanchion with our rib on each side. Fred's matching what I have, and then in the center we're going to measure, once we've got that 8 inches, and see what the center height is. On this one, it's 36 inches is what we're going to run the ridge pole at. Now, if this boat had a cabin top or anything higher, you might want to use the ridge pole that tapers down towards the bow and tapers down towards the stern to go over the highest point and then angle down towards the stern and down towards the bow. But we always get the height of that ridge pole at the widest, highest point of the boat. The second part of determining the height of the ridge pole, what we're going to do is take 2 pieces of tubing and put them together. That'll be long enough for us to reach the bow. We'll tighten the screws. In making the first piece of the ridge pole, what we're going to do is put a rubber tip on the bottom of this piece of tubing, and then we're going to hold it where it's going to be placed, which will be right here. Pick up our tubing, hold it at the 36-inch mark. When it's level, we're going to put a mark. That'll give us a place to bend this piece of tubing for the first ridge pole. All right, now we've bent the first ridge pole. This bend is kind of different on every boat. It's just basically you're going to have to look at what you need and bend it accordingly. Sometimes if you bend a little too much, you can take some bend out, but what you want is try to have the upright sitting in a good spot on the deck like this is. It can be straight up or a slight angle to it. And then when it levels out at the top, it's going to be at your 36-inch height. Now, if you were to make this too long, just determine how much too long it is. If it's an inch or two, take the rubber tip off, cut it off the bottom, and bring it back down. That's the first ridge pole in place. And we're going to fasten it with a cover clamp. We're going to install the second piece of ridge pole. In order to hold it up, we need a temporary brace. We're going to make an X brace out of 2 pieces of tubing. We've installed rubber tips on the bottom so they won't damage the deck. We're going to put one on the outside here, one on the opposite side, like so, and then we're going to put the cover clamp on. We're going to measure 36 inches. Hold that there, Fred. We're going to tighten the clamp. Okay, just snug the clamp a little bit. Then we're going to take our straight ridge pole, put it on top of this, put it in the end of ridge pole number 1, and we're going to tighten these screws. Always the screws that are face down so they don't interfere with the cover or damage the cover. Now the height of the ridge pole is level to the plane of the boat basically at this point. We've made it center with our X-brace, and we're going to clamp it in place with another clamp which will keep the X-brace from moving forward and back. Okay, now we've got our ridge pole started. We'll put another one on, which will be ridge pole number 3, and we'll keep moving towards the stern. We've installed another piece of ridge pole and made another temporary brace to hold it in place. The ridge pole is level, a level plane down the length of the boat and centered on the boat. Now I'm going to mark the stern ridge pole, the last piece. All right, we're going to install the last piece of tubing in the coupling. We're going to tighten the screw to hold it in place. Just one screw is enough just to hold it temporarily. And then what we're going to do is mark, we want to lay it against the bow rail or the stern rail at this point, and it's sitting on the deck with a rubber tip on it, and we're going to mark where the two tubings meet now. That's where we're going to make our bend at that line. Now we've bent our tubing on the mark, and we did it the same way we did all our other bends. This line, we lined it up with the star on the bender and made the bend to match the height of the ridge pole. Now we're going to insert it into the coupling, and we're going to tighten the screws. And then we're going to put a clamp to hold it to the rear rail. Again, with the nut facing in, always have the nuts facing in so they don't interfere with the cover. And the rubber goes between the two pieces of tubing. And we just tighten it up. That's the last piece of ridge pole installed. Now our ridge pole is completed. All right, I'm hanging the ribs now, and I'm marking them at 40-inch spacing. That's good for a heavy snow load area. 36 to 40 inches is fine. If you're in an area where you don't get much snow and just looking to protect the boat from the weather and rain and things of that nature, you could go as much as 48 inches, but I like to see like 36 to 40. And we'll mark this down the length of the ridge pole. Every 40 inches we'll make a mark, and we'll hang our ribs at that intersection. Now we're going to hang a rib. We're going to take a cover clamp, put it over the top of the ridge pole, and then hook it underneath the rib. And we're going to just tighten the nut a little bit here. You can use a nut driver or battery drill as I'm using. Okay. That'll give us a beginning to hang our first rib, and we'll continue to hang them on down the length of the ridge pole. hung the ribs at a 40-inch spacing down the length of the boat, we're going to start to install what's called pocket braces. The pocket brace goes approximately halfway between the ridge pole and the gunnel of the boat. We're going to use cover clamps to hold it in place, and then we'll measure and adjust it. Just put this on loosely. What we want to do is put this pocket brace halfway between the ridge pole and the gunnel of the boat. So we're going to take a dimension from that ridge pole, and we're looking at about 4'6", so 2'3" would be what we want to put the pocket brace at, which is pretty close, just has to go down a little bit. And we're going to just check that dimension. It doesn't have to be exactly the center, just a generalization. It's just to keep these ribs from moving fore and aft and changing the spacing between them. We want to keep them parallel. And it also boxes the frame, makes it much stronger. As we continue back with this pocket brace, we're going to have to put a bend in it because it's running out towards the gunnel of the boat too much. So we're going to mark it where the rib is with the magic marker, and we're going to put a bend in it, just a little bend so it goes straight down towards the stern of the boat. We've made our bend, and now we're going to install our cover clamp. Again, with the nut facing down and the rubber goes between the two tubings, and we'll just tighten it up. We're going to make another tubing just like this for the opposite side and install that. Now we're going to make temporary braces to level the ribs up and down so that they're at the same height on each side of the boat. What we're going to do is put a rubber tip on a piece of tubing, and we're going to make a temporary brace that goes up and down like so. We'll put the cover clamp in here. And we'll just tighten it up. Just a little bit. We don't want it too tight. Okay. We're going to put one on the port side, one on the starboard side, and then we're going to level this up and down and get it to the same dimension. Now that I've got the temporary brace on, it's loose enough that I can slide it up and down. What we want to do is take the dimension from the rib down to the deck at the outer edge near the gunnel, and this is 32 inches. We're going to see that we have it equal on each side. So we'll measure both sides and adjust this up and down as we need it. All we have to do is just slide it up or down till we get the right height and just tighten the nut. Now we're ready to make rib legs. What we're going to do is take a piece of tubing, we've put a rubber tip on the bottom. You want to determine whether you want to use it on the inside of the perimeter tubing or on the outside. In this case, we're going to go on the inside. And then we're going to mark the bottom just underneath the rib onto the rib leg with a line. And we're going to make a bend there, a 60-degree bend. And that will be the rib leg. Now that we've bent the rib leg, we're going to mark it about 6 or 8 inches up from the bend, and we're going to mark the rib in the same place. A line on the rib, a line on the rib leg. And we're going to cut those two off and put a coupling there. We're going to cut off the rib leg with a tubing cutter on the line. And we're going to ream the end of the tubing so we can put a red end plug in. Best to ream outside the boat if you can so the filings don't fall on the deck. All right, we reamed the tubing. We're going to put a red end plug in. On every cut we make, we put an end plug in. It keeps out the dirt and the condensation. Also protects the boat. It gives it a little soft edge instead of being hard metal corner. And then we're going to cut off the rib now on the mark and then do the same thing. Put a red end plug in and we're going to connect them with a coupling. Now we're going to put a coupling on, and then we're going to tighten the 2 screws. Always the screws facing down so we don't interfere with the cover. And we're going to install the rib leg. Actually, it's got to go outside here. We'll tighten the screws. Now we're going to attach the rib leg to the perimeter tubing using a cover clamp. The rubber goes between the 2 pieces of tubing and the nut facing in, and we're going to tighten it up in place. Our first rib leg is completed. We'll continue to do rib legs in the same fashion on each rib as we go towards the back of the boat. All right, now we've installed all the ribs, rib legs, pocket braces, and we're going to install the last thing, which is the vertical supports. We put a rubber tip on the end of the piece of tubing. You can use a piece of scrap tubing, leftover tubing. And we're going to put it up against the ridge pole and sort of preload the ridge pole slightly by lifting it a little bit. And we're going to mark the top of the ridge pole onto the vertical support where it meets. Right here, and we're going to cut that off, put a red end plug in it, and we're going to connect it with a cover clamp. We're going to cut it off on the line. Now we've cut it, we're going to ream it, and we're going to put in a red end plug. As we said before, these are good for keeping out all the dust and dirt and condensation, and also to protect the boat a little bit. If it touches the boat on the deck, it won't scratch it. Now we're going to put a slide lock over the end of the tube. We slide it down a ways, and we're just going to lock it in place with tightening 1 screw a little bit. Now the difference between slide locks and couplings are, slide locks have no restriction around the center. They can slide up and down the tubing. A coupling has a restriction in the center. It'll only go on halfway. Once it gets to the halfway point, that's it. It won't go any further. So we're using slide locks in this position. Then we're going to put it up against the tubing here. We're going to connect it with a cover clamp and then slide the slide lock up against the bottom of the cover clamp. Okay, we've got our cover clamp. Put it on like so. Put the rubber between the 2 tubings. Preload it slightly by lifting on it, and then tighten the nut. Now we're going to loosen the screw on the slide lock, slide it up against the bottom of the clamp, and tighten the 2 screws. This makes a super strong joint. We'll do the other 2, and then we'll be ready to put the labels on the whole frame. We'll put the end plug in, put the slide lock on, and just snug it in place temporarily. And then we're going to connect it with a clamp. The last thing to do on the vertical support is installed the protection pads. They go on with just a glove button, wrap them around, snap them in place, and it protects that from chafing the cover. You can use these over and over again. Next year, just take them apart, pull the glove buttons apart, put them away, and put them back on when you need them. The last thing to do in the process is install the label system. It's a peel and stick vinyl color and number system. There's a color for each location. Like for instance, rib legs on the port side would be red, on the starboard side they would be green, the ridge pole is yellow, and we'll just install those. That's the last part of the job and the frame is completed. This will aid you each year in putting it back up. You'll know exactly where the pieces go, and it makes it very, very easy. This is our starboard rib leg. Now we're going to stick the numbers on the inside of the pole so the cover doesn't chafe against them. Okay, rib leg number 1, number 2, number 3. As you go towards the stern, the numbers go up. Now on the port side, let's start with the pocket braces. The pocket braces are brown. This is for the starboard pocket brace. We'll peel off number 1. Now what I always do is I always put the label towards the front of the tubing. So you'll know wherever there's a label that goes towards the front of the boat. We put again underneath so the cover doesn't rub on them. And we'll move our way back to do the second one. All right, we're going to install the label on the second pocket brace. That's number 2. We're going to put it underneath like we did with the first one. And I keep them at the forward joint. See this joint? This piece will go into this. This is the forward portion of this joint. So anytime you're putting these back together, you know all the tags go towards the front of the boat. You start with number 1, number 2, number 3, and so on. And that's it for the pocket braces. We have a different color for the opposite side. The ridge pole is yellow. We're going to start with number 1 ridge pole. We'll stick it on the bottom of the tubing towards the front here. Stick it on so the cover won't hit it. We put it underneath. And then the second one back, ridge pole number 2, we're going to go with the front part of the joint. All right, number 2 ridge pole. It's going on the front end of that pole, underneath. And we continue to mark it the same way as we go towards the back of the boat. The numbers go up as we go towards the stern. The vertical supports are black. Peel them off, and we just stick them on the pole like so. And just each one as you go towards the stern, put the next number on, 2, 3, 4, as many as you've got. Also in the kit is a label system. You can put your own positions in and what they are. If you had a brace that went from handrail to handrail, you could put where the brace went, what number it was, for instance, and peel these off and stick it on that piece of tubing. And then last, in the kit, there is a diagram which shows you whether it be powerboat or sailboat, where the pieces go, how they're numbered, and you can actually make a list of each one here where they might go. So you can look at this sheet and you'll refresh your memory on where those tubings go. A good idea too is if you take a couple of pictures, it's also helpful. The last thing is to mark the intersection of where the clamps go. You can use a magic marker, which works well. This way when it comes time to put it back together, you know exactly where that clamp went on this piece of tubing. Or you could take a piece of black electrical tape and wrap it around right here and here, here and here, and you'll always know that's where that clamp goes on those pieces of tubing. You do that on all the clamps of the frame, and it makes it very easy to reassemble it next year. To help extend the life of your cover, you could use what we call cover cushion. Basically, it's foam pipe insulation. What we do is we just stick it on the tubing, spread it apart here, bring it as far up as we want to go, which is basically, once we put the cover cushion on, what we'll do is take some electrical tape, wrap around the rubber here and then down onto the electrical pipe, wrap a piece around the center and one up at the top, and that'll stop it from sliding up and down and hold it in place and really pad the cover nicely. As an additional brace, you can take strapping, which is what we use to tie the covers on also, and you can bring it around where the vertical support meets the ridge pole. It's the perfect place to tie it. Wrap it around a few times. and bring it down to a solid tie place on the opposite side, like the stanchion base is perfect, or a cleat or anything like that. We're going to cut this off and tie it on there. We've installed the strapping, which gives us a side-to-side wind brace. You can do this wherever there's a vertical support down the length of the frame. It'll give you additional strength. If the frame were higher, definitely you need this. On this particular frame, you could probably get away without it, but I just wanted to show you how you would do it to give you more side-to-side wind resistance. Our cover is called Ultra Cover. It's a long life material. It's a 3-ply laminate with a mesh built in between. Comes in clear, white, or black. As you can see in the clear, you can see the mesh built right in. One of the other unique things about our particular cover is it can be trimmed with a scissor. You can trim off any excess, such as the bow when you have too much material. Just cut it with a scissor. It does not need a hem. It won't unravel. It doesn't weaken the material. And the other thing that we do is we use a cover clip, which is one of the things we make for this cover. It has two parts, a part A and a part B. You put part A underneath the material, like so. Part B goes on top. You slide them together. And once it locks in place, it's very, very strong. Each one of these clips will hold 150 pounds of force. It grabs the material in between. It's a compound wedge. Will not damage the material, yet very strong. Can be removed at any time by just sliding it back out again. You'll see it doesn't damage the material. And it can even be used in the center. It doesn't only have to go on the perimeter or the edge. You can put it anywhere on a material that you want to put a tie down point. Our cover clips are made out of Lexan, which is what they make bulletproof glass out of. They're very, very strong. They'll last for years. They're not affected by cold. They're really a great product. Cover clips come packaged in two different ways. There's 5 in a package like this you'd probably find in a hardware or marine store, or you can order them from us in a bulk package and just buy as many as you need, whether it be 10, 20, 50, 100, doesn't matter. One of the things we recommend using is strapping material. It's very strong, inexpensive, but the best part about it is it doesn't stretch. We use this to cross tie the frame, port to starboard. We also use it for tying down our covers. We sell a 750-foot roll. It's about what you'd need for the average boat. Very inexpensive, highly recommended. One of the accessories that we offer is a zipper door. Comes with instructions on how to put it on. Our Kover Klamp doors are very durable and long-lasting. They have a heavy-duty zipper with a pull on both sides. They're made out of our Ultra Cover material, which is the same as our cover is made of. Has the mesh built right in, so it'll last just as long as the cover does. And the outside dimension of the door is 30 by 40. This door is installed using a tape that we make called sealant tape. It also has the mesh built right into it, just like the cover does. This tape has a special adhesive on the back, has a plastic covering on it that you have to peel off. And once this bonds with our cover material, it does not come off. It's not removable. So when you start to put it on, you have to have this door lined up properly, and you'll see it just once this goes on here, it just sticks on. So you peel the clear plastic off to expose the adhesive, which is kind of gooey. Once that's on there, it won't come off. That's watertight and installed permanently. That's how you install a door, using this tape. This tape also can be used for making repairs on the cover. If you had a rip or a hole, you could put a piece of this on the outside, maybe a piece on the inside. It'll be just as strong or stronger than the rest of the cover, and very easy to make a repair on your cover with this tape. It's called sealant tape. We sell it in a roll. This is a 50-foot roll. We also have sealant tape pre-cut to install a zipper door. It has 4 pieces cut to size to go around the perimeter of the door. Just peel off the clear plastic backing, stick it on in place, and your door is installed. One of the other accessories we have is a vent. Very easy to install. We'll just open this package, take it out. It consists of a 2-part ring. One goes on the inside of the material, one goes on the outside. A screen vent that snaps right in like so, and then a clamshell cover that would go on. So what you would do is Take the ring, take a pen, mark the inside, then cut this out with a scissor. All right, now that we've cut the hole, what we're going to do is take the outer ring and the screen and put them together. Then we're going to put that through the hole. And then we put the inner ring on. Once you've got that snapped together, that holds it on the canvas. And then you can install the clamshell cover, which goes on in the groove like so. Now this will let air in. It has a screen to keep out any bugs or whatever. When you want to fold your cover up next year, you can remove this and you won't have this lump to deal with. Put it on the side, fold your cover up, this will stay flat. And when you come back after you put your cover on the following year, just put the clamshell cover back on in the groove, push it down, and you're all set to go. It locks in. Okay, I've made this rib leg a little taller than it should be to show you how to correct when you make a bend that's improper. It's very easy to correct. Just take the ruler, measure from the top of the rib on the side here to the top of the rib leg. It's 3 1/4 inches. We'll take the 3 1/4 inches off the bottom and this will fit perfectly. Now I cut the 3 1/4 inches off the bottom of the leg and it fits perfectly. It lines up with the rib. And if we were just installing this, we would cut it, mark the two of them, cut it, and install it with a coupling like this one is. To measure for a cover, what we're going to do is we're going to take a ruler, go down below the gunnel about 16 inches or so. You can go even further if you want to go to the waterline. It depends on how much you want to cover. And basically come up and go to the center ridge pole. And whatever that dimension is, we'll double it, and that gives us the width for our cover. This one would be 18.8 is what the width of this cover would be. And the length, I'll show you how to do the length. It's very simple. All right, to measure for the length, what we're going to do is we're going to bring this ruler down about 2 or 3 feet past the bow. Follow the contour of the ridge pole all the way down, and then down the transom to where you want the cover to end, and that'll become the length dimension. And that's how we measure for the cover. When using a rib to determine the height of the ridge pole, on boats that are larger, a 10-foot length won't be long enough to be able to get out towards the outer part of the gunnel. So what we'll do is we'll take a coupling, stick it on the end, add a piece of tubing to it, and use that to measure down from the end of that tubing now to the height that we need, the top of the lifeline stanchion. That'll determine the height of the ridge pole. So that's how we extend our rib for a wider boat. If you're building your frame and the mast is up and you want to run the ridge pole down the center, you can go around the mast by making a bend such as this. What we do is we take the tubing bender, we've hooked it on, we made a bend in this direction. Then we went in the opposite direction, we went this way to get that bend. And basically did the same on the opposite side. We wound up with a piece like this. Now what we would do is we would take and put a coupling on this end and a coupling on this end and run our ridge pole down the center of the boat, and that's how we go around a mast. If you're building your frame and you have your mast in place and the boom and you want to go over the top of the boom, basically we would just take our rib, raise it on top of the boom as high as we'd like it, and make our rib legs long enough to support the rib. One of the things we like to do on a cover clamp frame is pad the bends wherever we can. It extends the life of your cover. What we use is stuff we call cover cushion. All it is basically insulation for your pipe, cold water pipe or hot water pipe. The size we use is 3/4 copper or for 1/2 inch threaded pipe. And it's real neat stuff. It's very inexpensive. All you do is you measure how much you need to go around a bend. You can cut this off, or you just even rip it basically. Put it on the tubings. It has a slit in it, so you can open it up. So you can put it on the tubing, go around the bend like so. This will really pad the cover nice. But what we do to hold it in place is we take some electrical tape. Now we'll start on the pipe, and go around a couple of times on the pipe, and then work our way up onto the tubing, from the tubing up onto the padding. We do that at the top, a piece at the bottom of the bend. Start the same way on the pipe. This holds it from sliding around up and down the pipe. And then sometimes I like to put one right around the middle, just to hold it in place. Now that'll stop it from sliding up and down the pipe. It'll last more than 1 year. You get a couple of years at least out of this. It's an inexpensive way to extend the life of your cover. It makes a big, big difference. We call that cover cushion. Very easy to do. Once you've installed this, in most cases you can leave this on from year to year. You don't have to take it off when you disassemble your frame. It can stay on the rib leg, or if it's on any bend, just leave it on there and you're ready to go for next year. The purpose of this video today is to explain the proper way to install a cover. Little things that you can do that make a big difference in how your cover is going to survive in severe weather conditions. One of the things you can do is use this strapping, which is what we recommend to tie your cover. It's much better than cord because cord stretches out and will allow the cover to loosen and start to flap in the wind. This makes a big difference on how your cover is going to survive a severe windstorm. The next thing that you should do is pleat the material so it takes the shape of the boat. We've used a cover clip, which is capable of grabbing two pieces of material, made a pleat, and then tied it on an angle to pull the cover tight so it's not going to blow in the wind. The next thing you should do is lace the bow to kind of form fit the cover to the boat. We've used our cover clips as a tie point. These cover clips are kind of unique because they can work anywhere on the cover, even in the middle of the cover, not only on the edge. And they'll hold 150 pounds of force. They really work well for this application. We've used them here and up in the bow. This keeps the cover nice and tight, again, so the wind can't grab this and start to rip this cover. At the stern, we've taken and wrapped this like a package. Again, we've also used the cover clips where we needed to, where there was no grommet, to pull everything nice and tight and hold it against the boat. Another important aspect of this cover installation is to use these straps over the top of the cover. They're placed between the ribs and pulled down snugly, and they form a trough for the rain and the snow to run off. They also stop the cover from bellowing out in the wind and relieve some of the stress and strain on the grommets. This particular pleat was made with a cover clip. What we've done is we've folded the material and we've installed it and actually grabbed two pieces and pulled it on an angle to hold the contour to the boat. Now that the cover's removed, we folded it up. It's important to put it away clean and dry and store it in a dry place. So next year, you're ready to go, put it right back on again. I'm going to fold from one end. This will force the air out the other end and give us a nice, neat, clean, tight package. Another way to prolong the life of your cover is to use cover cushion on any sharp bends or any areas that need padding. Simply split it open, put it over the tubing, cut it off to length, and put a couple of either wire ties or some electrical tape around it to hold it, and that'll cushion this cover. We're going to install an ultra cover on this boat to give you the proper way of installing this type of cover. Now we've unpacked our ultra cover and we folded it in half. So we're going to run a dotted line down the seam, which will give us the location of the center point from inside the boat. We're going to put that right on top of the ridge pole, that dotted line. All right, I'm going to put the dotted line, basically just a line along the crease. And what I like to do is every so often put an arrow so I know which way is going to be towards the bow. So next year I know how this cover has to go back on again. And we're just going to put it along this crease. And what this is going to do is, when we have this cover unfolded on the boat and we're inside trying to center it, we know that that dotted line has to go on the ridge pole, and that'll give us center on the cover. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to open up the cover with that line facing down towards the ground, and then we're going to fold each side in about 2-foot increments until we have one long piece that will roll from one end to the other. Now we're going to continue to do this till we get to that center line. What we're going to do is we're going to fold this from back to front, so we have a nice package that we can put on a boat. One of the things you should do as you're folding it, because it's on the ground, it's going to pick up some dirt. We just sweep it off as we roll it, basically, just so it goes on clean, doesn't put the dirt on the boat. Now that we folded, we brought it up on the boat, we've laid it on the ridge pole. Leave enough material to cover the bow. We're going to unroll it down the ridge pole and then drop the sides off. Now that we've unrolled it on the ridge pole, we're going to unfold it and we're going to line up that dotted line on the ridge pole. That'll give us our center point. What we've done is we've aligned the cover with the dotted line over the ridge pole. That centers everything for us, makes it very easy. What we're going to do is install cover clips on the cover, and we start at the center of the boat, where basically if you look at the top, it's pretty much flat across. And we're going to start tying it down at this point with some temporary ties. The way the cover clip is installed, you take part A, put it behind the cover, part B goes in front, and basically just slide the two wedges together, and then we're going to tie our strapping material right to this ring. Again, it ties just like cord would, like a knot. And we're going to tie it just temporarily around the trailer, just to hold the cover in place while we actually fit it. And we'll do that, we place these clips about every 2 feet along the perimeter.
If your boat is not stored on a trailer or you don't wish to tie to the trailer, you can tie under the boat from one cover clip on one side to another cover clip on the opposite side and tie it down snug. We don't recommend tying to the jack stands or any blocking that may be supporting the boat, as the cover could pull these loose.
Now what we're going to do is we're going to fold one piece under the other and then tie this bow, and we're going to use cover clips wherever we need a place to tie. We just slide them on, and that'll give us a place to put our strapping material to tie it with. What we've done is we put some ties on one side of this canvas, pulled it back to pull it around underneath, and now we've installed some cover clips, and we're going to actually lace this, which will keep this bow nice and tight. Do the trimmage. One of the nice things about the Ultra cover is it could be trimmed with a scissor. It won't affect the strength of the cover, it won't unravel, it won't rip, but yet it'll make it almost like a fitted cover. Now the cover clips can be placed on an angle. If you need to pull the cover on an angle, just install the clip whichever way you need to pull it, and that'll give you a good place to tie to. Another thing you should do to ensure the best possible covering job is install vents. You should have one on each side of the boat, one in the bow, one towards the stern, so air can pass through. To install the vent, you have to pick an area that has no obstructions behind it, like a rail stanchion or whatever. A vertical area is best, it keeps out the snow and rain. What we're going to do is pick our spot, and then just take a pen and make a circle on the inside like so. We're going to cut that out and install the vent. And then we have this piece, and then the screen. And then we have the hood that's got to go on. And that's it. We also have available zipper doors. The zipper is a two-sided zipper. There's a pull on the outside and on the inside. It's very easy to install. You pick a spot where there's no obstruction on the inside, where you want to enter the boat, lay it out on the canvas, and then we have a special tape called sealant tape that you'll stick on here. You want to wipe this first with denatured alcohol to clean the area, both on the door and on the cover, wherever the tape is going to make contact. Once you've got it all cleaned up and ready to install, you just peel the back off the tape and install it around the perimeter of the door opening. Once it's all taped in, open the zipper, take a razor knife, cut out the inside piece of material, and you've got your door installed. The tape looks like this. It's a mesh reinforced tape. All you have to do is peel off the plastic on the back to expose the sealant, which is the actual adhesive. Once this is installed on the cover, it's not removable, so you have to be really accurate when you install it, that you put it on exactly in the spot it's supposed to be. Once it's installed, it's permanent. To access the inside of the boat, you have to unzip the zipper. You're going to cut out that piece of material on the inside. Basically, that's all you have to do to install the door. You have your access door installed.